Welcome to Combat Center, your home for all your combat sports here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network and on our fight exclusive channel, the Combat Center channel. So make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to that channel as well. I'm joined by my man Frank Zaffrey. No Alex Dono today. My man is working 500 hours on these YouTube channels, so we're giving him the night off. I'm Jonathan, aka 3-Piece Combo. My man Frank, how you doing this evening?
I'm good, bro. Without Alex, we get a chance to talk. No, I'm just kidding. But we got to throw some love to Alex. Didn't he get the call up to do a fight card tomorrow night? So I think my man is doing a lot of homework, catching
Yeah, he
up on a
definitely.
card he wasn't prepared for.
For sure. He's going to have to go and learn about new fighters. He's getting called up to do Combate America Friday. So shout out to Alex, man. Congratulations. That's huge. You're going to get to go call that fight. But shout out to him. But we also have another fun fight this weekend with the up-and-comer, Rafael Fiziev, excellent, devastating striker against a guy who's been in the sport for a very long time, Frank. And he's been at a ranked contendership. He has the ground game. He has the striking as well in Rafael dos Anjos. So let's get right into it, my man. And I'm going to let you go ahead and break this one down. So before we get into the actual X's and O's of this fight, RDA is number 7. Fiziev is number 10 right now. We know this division doesn't have an actual champion, and Alexander Volkanovski might be coming up. What are the implications of this fight coming up? What do you think the winner of this fight gets moving forward?
Well, this is the kind of fight, Jonathan, that I really love because it has huge implications, even though it's not a title fight. Rafael dos Anjos, I feel bad saying this. Years ago, when he was the lightweight champion, for those watching, he was at one time our lightweight champion. I called him the most uninteresting champion the UFC had ever had because he just, I don't know, he's a great fighter, but he just didn't relate to the audience. He didn't have that, whatever that is. And now he's a guy that you forget about. And when you remember him, you realize the incredible depth of this division, right? But for Dos Anjos, this fight is all the marbles. He beats Fiziev, and all of a sudden, he's lining himself up for another crack at the title. He loses to the number 10 lightweight currently in the world, if you believe the rankings that the UFC puts out. And suddenly he's a gatekeeper. So those kinds of implications make for a very, very interesting fight.
And on top of that, this is a division that's really hasn't been booked at all. I mean, Charles Oliveira, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler, Islam Makhachev, all without fights at this moment. So we could be even Beneil Dariush without a fight at this moment. So we could be looking at one of these guys facing up against one of those guys that were legitimate contender after the win of this fight. So let's talk about some of the X's and O's of this, man, because this is an interesting one. You have Rafael Fiziev, and this man's Muay Thai and his striking is absolutely devastating. I mean, you have a guy that's coming in 11-1. I'm pretty sure. Yep, he's right now. He's won his last 5, and he's doing it with the striking, right? Averaging at landing at about 50%, 5 strikes per minute, doing a really good job, being very efficient with his strikes, as well as being good defensively and making his opponent miss about half the time as well. So we know that he has the striking, but RDA is a very well-rounded fighter, right? He has the ability to use that fight IQ and use that minute in between each round to make those adjustments. Hey, maybe I need to take this guy down. Maybe I need to slow him down and wear him out. So in the later rounds, he's not striking so hard. So I think this is a tough matchup for Fiziev, honestly. I do think he's a really, really good fighter, and I think the skill set is there. But if this fight goes to the ground, I'm just worried how it's going to play out. What's your mindset on this one?
Well, you correctly commented that Dos Anjos is a well-rounded fighter, but Fiziev is the definition of a well-rounded fighter. Muay Thai, striking, combat sambo, wrestling. Really, he's like cut from the cloth of all of these fighters that come from this terrifying part of the world where, they seemingly know how to do everything and can dictate wherever the fight goes. In my opinion, the advantage that Dos Anjos has is both experience and 5-round endurance. And he is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So he's not afraid to get on the ground. I think for him, if I'm going X's and O's, Dos Anjos must keep in Fiziev's face, must be pressing him, must keep the punches from extending, but, otherwise pressing, grinding, wearing him out, forcing him to gas a little bit, dragging him into the later rounds, and then hopefully either eking out a decision or hell, who knows, maybe grabbing a submission. But if he stands at range with Fiziev, if he plays that game at all, I think Dos Anjos is going to get lit up. He's too tough to get finished, in my opinion, and he's never been submitted. I checked that. I don't think he's ever been submitted, but he'll look shitty. I mean, he'll be busted up by the end of that fight if he plays that game.
Yeah, and actually, to your point, I was doing a little bit of stat digging. 1 for 20. 1 for 20 are the opponents of Rafael Fiziev on takedown attempts combined
Whew.
over his UFC career. So that's a pretty good number. They're shooting about five. He's shooting 95% defense right now. So if he's able to keep this fight standing, like you said, this is going to be a very, very tough spot for RDA to be in. So I want you to kind of look past this fight. And let's say Rafael does get this win. Is he lightweight contender material? Do you think he belongs up there with the names of Islam Makhachev, of a Charles Oliveira? Because in this division, what we've been seeing recently is all of the shiny names getting beat by all of the young and hungry guys, and that's really what's becoming a true contender. So if Fiziev is able to get past RDA, are you willing to call him a contender in this division?
I am, because I'm also unwilling to say that Charles Oliveira is not the champion, right? So if Dos Anjos finds a way to win this fight Saturday, I think that his skill set is uniquely qualified to beat someone like Charles Oliveira, because he's not going to be afraid of Charles Oliveira's guard. He's not going to be afraid. I read a few articles about this, and all of the themes of the various analysts that I think know a lot about this sport were that, if you go back and you watch Poirier fighting Charles Oliveira, if you watch Gaethje fighting Charles Oliveira, nobody wants to chase Charles down into his guard. Charles can get knocked down. Charles can get rocked. Charles can get pushed around. But once he hits his bag, nobody wants to follow him down there. And for good reason. The guy submits a lot of people. I don't know exactly what his record is for submissions, but it's pretty damn good. So I feel like Dos Anjos is somebody who will go there with him and could compete with him at that level. So I feel like, look, you mentioned Makhachev. He's the uncrowned lightweight champion. So, look, but unfortunately, this is a sport that requires media and fan interest to sell a fight. Makhachev's not there yet. So Dos Anjos has been the champion. He puts on wars. He's a great watch. You know what I mean? Even when he loses. And I feel like, look, he's fighting a top 10 guy, and he's fighting a guy nobody wants to fight. So if he beats this guy, then yeah, I think he deserves it. And I think the UFC would think very seriously about giving it to him. But the fly in the ointment on this whole goddamn thing is Conor McGregor. So we could talk about who's next and who deserves it. But at the end of the day, if Conor McGregor's leg is healed up and they can play the card, UFC can play the card that Charles isn't actually the champion, anyone that is legitimate and deserving may have to wait a while.
Now, speaking of Conor McGregor, he actually did have an interaction with Rafael Fiziev, speaking about how when Fiziev actually ducks the kicks. I don't know if you notice, if you know what I'm talking about. When he's ducking a high kick, he'll do kind of like what Adesanya does, not quite as emphasized, but he'll do the lean back and he'll let the kick go, and he'll go at a pretty crazy angle. So I was curious, if Fiziev and McGregor were to get match up, is that a murder on live TV?
Yes. Well, are you saying Conor McGregor kicking him? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, just the fight overall, because
Oh
what
no,
happened
I
was,
think. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Explain it. Yeah,
I was gonna
go
say
ahead.
on Twitter, some Conor McGregor quote tweeted the kick of his, or the way that he would dodge the kick, and he would say instead of going into a high kick, he would turn it into an axe kick midway. And then Fiziev saying, "Okay, go ahead and try that next time you go ahead, and if we ever end up training together or fighting together." So I was just curious on your quick picks of a Fiziev versus Conor McGregor fight.
There's absolutely no way I'm picking Conor McGregor against anybody in the top 10. And you and I and Alex have talked about this. Conor McGregor's game has not evolved at all. A guy with combat sambo and wrestling, I mean, he is going to work Conor McGregor. He doesn't have to get into a striking contest with him. I think he would drag him on the ground and beat the absolute living shit out of him. Conor McGregor's best shot is, Charles Oliveira. I mean, I know Charles has been doing great, and his run has been stupendous. But you have to admit that, quite ironically, he's the weak link in the opportunities for Conor McGregor against top contending lightweights in this division. He doesn't want any part of this part of the world that is rising up to take over this division. And certainly Fiziev falls into that category.
Yeah, he's too good. He's too fresh. He's too young, and he's just too skilled. But he's one of those new young guys. Now, moving on to some of the news of what's coming up later this month, we have UFC London coming up. Darren Till was scheduled to face Jack Hermanson in this fight, but again, he's actually going to have to pull out due to injury. We're going to have Chris Curtis actually going in, Action Man coming in. But I want to actually talk about this because this is not the first time we've seen this from Darren Till. Darren Till has been pulled out of fights now. He's had that nagging knee injury, and it seems like we might have seen the best from Darren Till. So I just want your thoughts on this. Do you think Darren Till can kind of come back and make a career resurgence? We've seen that he's been working with Hamzat, that kind of training camp. Or do you think that he's past his prime and he's just more of kind of a name value now that you stick on of kind of like a fight night to kind of draw some crowd in?
I don't know if I don't think he's past his prime. I just think his ceiling was much, much lower than we realized. And, much to the detriment of the UFC that needs, I guess they have Patty Pimblett, but, they need that big star for that, for that European country. And, I got to tell you, like, Michael Bisping set the bar very high for tough, gritty, evolving, just when you think he can't get better, he gets better. Mike, you never thought you'd see Michael Bisping with great wrestling, and then all of a sudden he had great wrestling, and then all of a sudden he shocks the world with Luke Rockhold. Who would have ever saw that coming after their first fight? I mean, Michael Bisping, and then you saw him, at the end with George St. Pierre, where I didn't think he looked half bad, dealing with that. I mean, and now you got Darren Till, who's seemingly always hurt, and I don't know. It's just it's a big drop. It's a big dump from what we're used to. From I think the personality of that country, the tough as nails, fight through anything. But Darren Till, not out of his prime, just much lower ceiling. If you really want to know, I feel like the end happened for him when Masvidal knocked him out. I feel like that was the end because there's a guy who was much bigger than, really should have been able to beat. And to get KO'd like that, I felt like that was it, and I felt like, all right, we've seen Darren Till. The show is over.
That was definitely the moment that his career started to take a downturn because you're in the O2 building, you're in London, you have
Right.
Masvidal, who's, hasn't been before that fight, right? And that was actually the one of the first fights that I watched and fell in love with Masvidal with, and that's why I got the whole three-piece combo name. But um, he went in there and he was fighting a Masvidal who was coming off of a long break, right? He took that long time to do that reality show. He was coming in off some ring rust, and you saw that in the first round. Darren Till should have taken advantage of that, like you said. But unfortunately for him, it didn't work out. When he was able to go down and cut down to try to fight Tyrone Woodley for the championship, same thing. He just didn't perform in those high moments. And now it seems like you said, the prime or not the ceiling maybe just wasn't what it thought it was. The talk was kind of a little bit more than what the skills were, unfortunately, because this man is a charismatic person. You love to hear him
Yes.
talk. He does a great job of, if he had the skills, he would sell all the pick tickets in the world. But the issue is he's a stand-up fighter and he doesn't have the best skill set to make it far in this division. Now, 185 is a division where, you can make it as a stand-up fighter, but going to Adesanya, there's too many wrestlers on the way.
Who's the guy who does all the English commentating? He was a great fighter too, great personality. Who's that guy?
Was it Dan Hardy?
Dan Hardy. Yeah, he reminds me a little of Dan Hardy. Good fighter, not the ceiling you expected, but tremendous personality. And maybe has a career doing something like Dan Hardy, but just not the fighter that we thought he was going to be.
Yeah, Dan Hardy, one of the best minds in MMA. If you haven't,
Mm-hmm.
checked out the full reptile stuff that he does on his channel, he breaks down fights by frame. It's a beautiful thing. He's a great brain to pick and watch fights.
Yeah.
Before we close this out, there was a release on the roster today. Tony Kelly got released, and he said a lot of things that kind of brought some negative connotation to him. And the guy that he fought in Adrian Yanez is now ranked at 15. So here's the UFC cutting a fighter that's almost a ranked competitor because of the negativity that he draws to themselves. Do you think it's because of the skill set he had, or do you think it's just because of what he did and the attention that he drew to himself?
Yeah, I don't think the UFC gives a rat's ass about attention you draw to yourself. And in fact, I think the UFC likes attention in any form. I think it's just a function of marketability. So, if they don't think they can make money with you, then they get rid of you. And I think that has everything to do with it because, you and I could sit here and do another 30 minutes listing fighters who have brought enormously poor attention to themselves and they stay very firmly entrenched in the roster. Your boy, three piece, George Masvidal, being the latest example of that with a street assault for which he is still dealing in the judicial system. But, look, they love that. That just made him more effing authentic, right? But, this is just all about can you market this guy? And look, how many of the people watching this show even know who this guy is? I mean, honestly, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that has everything to do with it.
That's a fair point there. So I know this might make you a little bit mad to close off on, but Jake Paul is not fighting Tommy Fury anymore. Jake Paul is actually fighting a quite legitimate boxer in Tommy
Yeah,
Rahman
yeah,
Jr.
yeah.
Now, or Hasim Rahman Jr. Sorry about that. Now, Amanda Serrano is also fighting on this card, so it's going to be a fun card. But I was just wanted your thoughts on this because he's fighting a guy that's had legitimate boxing experience, legitimate KO experience, and he's knocked people out before. This is the first time that we've seen Jake Paul fight like a legitimate boxer, right? He's fought, Ben Askren, Tyron Woodley, KSI. He's fought a couple of guys that really don't matter, but this is the first legitimate boxer that he's getting to doing. Michael Duhan, we're doing well, man. I hope you're doing well as well. All a couple of people right here. Make sure you guys like the video. Appreciate you guys checking us out. And if you're not subscribed to the new Combat Center channel, the Fight Only Center, make sure you guys check that out.
Yeah, look, I got to tell you, no, you don't have to apologize for bringing this up. I'm glad you did. Jake Paul is somebody that I like to poke fun at, but there's a couple things. Well, the first thing that I can't make fun of is the guy's making a ton of money and he's making boxing interesting. And whether you think he's for real or not, the fact that he's making boxing a big deal again, particularly with a young audience, is tremendous for the sport of boxing. And I don't know about you, but I'm old. And so boxing was my first love in terms of combat sports. So to see boxing coming back and being meaningful again in a significant way to young people, I think Jake Paul deserves a lot of credit for that. And the thing that he's doing now makes me really like him. He's not trying to fight a washed up UFC fighter who never could strike anyway in a guy like Ben Askren. He's not fighting a guy like Tyron Woodley, who clearly has a psychological problem about competition right now. I memean, with all due respect to Tyron, there's something wrong with his head in combat right now. Dean Thomas will talk to you forever about that, it's evident, and Jake Paul took advantage of. But this is a real fight, and man, he took it on short notice. The swap on short notice, that's big balls, man. So I got nothing but respect for Jake Paul taking this fight, and I'm going to watch it. This is going to be a Jake Paul fight that I'm going to pay for, and I'm going to watch. He's fighting a real boxer, and I want to see what happens.
I think that's a really good point because early in his career, he was going up against guys that necessarily weren't boxers. But most guys that are in boxing, anyways, their records are quite padded until they get up to the, 10s and 15s, and then they're actually fighting legitimate guys. So now he's fighting a legitimate guy in his fourth or fifth fight. He's going up and he's been training. That's the thing. He has, Alex will talk about this a lot, right? He has all the resources in the world to be great. He has all the
Right.
money, he has all the time, and he can get the best coaches and literally do nothing but box. And that's what he's been doing, and he's been improving as well. He actually sparred and trained with Hasim, so I'm curious to see how that training will translate to actually on the boxing ring. But it's going to be an interesting fight, and I think this is going to be the first legitimate fight that Jake Paul is going to be in. And I'm curious to see how he's going to do because this could be something that you, like you said, can spark a new generation of fans to come and watch. My niece is turning 10 in about a month. She's talking about Jake Paul boxing because of I don't know how she found it, but she's not even 10 yet. But that's the type of fans and that's the type of people you're bringing in. And on top of that, they have females in the co-main event. Excellent, excellent. He's doing such a good job of putting the females and making sure the women's boxing gets as much respect and as much pay as the men's boxing as well. So I think he's doing a great thing for the sport. Like you said, Frank, he's legitimizing himself, legitimizing the sport as well, and just bringing more eyes. And that's what you need. Boxing was dying. The political, all the politics and all of that and different belts, it was dying. Best fighters are not fighting the best fighters. But at least now you have a guy that's bringing the eyes back to it, bringing the entertainment value back to it, and it's going to be something fun to see. Any closing thoughts before we close it out, man?
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing about Jake Paul. I will not talk shit about you, Jake Paul, if you lose that fight. I got nothing but respect for you taking this fight. And if you lose, you got your whole career ahead of you. There's no shame in this. You're fighting a real fighter, and if it ends badly, so be it. I mean, that's how it goes. Sometimes you lose a fight. So I'm super excited. I'm excited. I can't believe I'm saying it. I'm excited to watch a Jake Paul fight.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what skill set that he's going to be bringing in and the improvements that he's made from his last fight to this fight. Because, I mean, let's be honest, he knocked out Tyron Woodley. That's a UFC champion, regardless if it's boxing gloves or not. He made him bite on a feint and he hit him with a perfect overhand right. Like, he made him bite on that feint that I was reading since the second round. Like, it's the same feint that Sean Strickland essentially bit on for Alex Pereira. And it was just the opposite hook that caught him. It was just a right overhand instead of a left hook. So, interesting matchup for sure. We have also, like I said, ranked lightweights fighting it out. Number 10, Rafael Fiziev versus number 7, RDA in some ranked contender lightweight fights. And in the end of the month, we got some more fights coming up. Full stacked month here in UFC in London. And we'll keep it right here on the Combat Center. Make sure you guys make sure you guys subscribe. Make sure you guys follow both of us on Twitter and everywhere else, wherever you want us to follow. But thank you guys all so much for watching. Thank you, Frank, for watching as well. And we'll see you guys at the next fight.